They told me 3 rules on my first night. Rule 1. After midnight, never take the elevator alone if you can see your reflection in the doors but not in the security mirror above them. Rule 2. If a passenger presses a floor that doesn't exist in the building directory, get out before the doors close, no matter how rude it seems. Rule 3. If the elevator stops on a floor with no button, do not step out. Whatever you see, whoever talks to you, whatever they promise you, stay inside and keep the doors from closing. My senpai, Sato, recited those rules while we were sitting behind the reception desk of the 24-story office building in Nishi Shinjuku. It was my first overnight shift as a part-time security guard. Are those written in the manual? I asked, half laughing. Sato shook his head and took a sip of canned black coffee. The fluorescent lights etched deep shadows into the wrinkles around his eyes. No. If they were written down, someone would try to prove them wrong. People are stupid like that. So we passed them on orally. He said it like he was talking about fire safety or earthquake drills. Calm. Routine. Non-negotiable. Outside the glass doors, Shinjuku's neon bled into the fog. It was a Friday night, and even after midnight, you could hear the distant pulse of clubs and karaoke boxes. But inside the lobby it was too bright and too quiet, like a hospital that had forgotten it was full of living patients. Come on, I said. You really believe in that stuff? I believe in what happens to people who ignore it. He set the coffee down and looked at me. You want to last at this job, don't you, Yuta? I just started my 3rd year at university. I needed the money. Night shifts paid better, and the building was only 2 train stops from campus. Sitting in a warm lobby, watching cameras and doing occasional patrols, it sounded easy enough. Of course, I said. Then remember the rules, Sato said. You don't have to believe in them. Just follow them. He leaned over and tapped the laminated sheet of paper on the desk. It was the official list of our duties: lock the side entrance at 1, do a patrol every 2 hours, note any suspicious persons, and so on. Then, with the same finger, he traced 3 invisible lines across the desk where the sheet ended, as if adding rules that only I could see. The first few nights were uneventful. I learned the routine, replacing the big key ring on its hook after patrols, rewinding the old-fashioned tape recorder that automatically logged noise levels in the lobby, nodding at bleary-eyed office workers who came down long after the last train had left. Our building, the Minato Central Tower, was a mix of companies. Advertising agencies, trading firms, a law office, a small game studio. The uppermost floors were rented to a late-night call center that never seemed to sleep. The elevator, though, it always drew my eyes. There were 3 cars, side by side, mirrored stainless steel doors shining under the lobby lights. During the day, they were never still. But by 1:30 a.m., only one stayed active, responding to late-night calls. The other 2 would park themselves at the ground floor and sit there, heavy and mute. I started to notice small things. Sometimes, as one of the inactive cars sat closed, I could see my reflection in the stainless steel, faint but clear. But in the convex security mirror above, where I should have seen a tiny version of myself at the desk, there was only the empty lobby. Once or twice I chalked it up to the angle, or the glare of the lights. I didn't call Sato about it. I just stood up, walked over to the vending machines as if I were thirsty, and avoided the elevators for a while. I followed the first rule without consciously deciding to. The second rule came up a week later. It was around 2:10 a.m., the time when the late-night rush of overworked salarymen dwindled to almost nothing. I was fighting my eyelids, scribbling half-legible notes in the logbook to stay awake, when the doors slid open and a woman staggered in. She was in her mid-30s, wearing a navy suit and carrying a laptop bag that looked too heavy for her narrow shoulders. Her makeup had blurred around her eyes, smeared into shadows. She walked past the desk with that particular zombie-like gait of someone who'd been sitting in front of a blue screen for 12 hours straight. "Good evening," I said automatically. She flinched, as if she'd forgotten other people existed at this hour, then forced a tired smile. "Good evening. Sorry, I stayed way too late." Is the elevator still working? Yes. Last one stops around 3. Thank God, she muttered. I watched her walk toward the elevator. She pressed the call button. One of the cars slid open, its interior glowing softly. She stepped inside, turned, and looked at the panel of buttons. I wasn't really paying attention. I was thinking of instant noodles and the exam I had on Monday. Then, casually, my eyes drifted to the indicator above the doors, the digital list of floor numbers. 24, 23, 22. 4, 3, 2, 1, B1, B2. We didn't have a 13th floor. Superstition, the building manager had explained. The call center was on 21 to 24. The law firm on 19 and 20. The game studio on 14. Number 13. The woman's finger hovered over the buttons. Then she pressed 1. 14. No problem. I returned to my notebook. But then her hand moved again. Almost absent-mindedly, she tapped another button at the bottom of the panel. A button I had never noticed. It was between 4 and 5. A narrow bar of light with a single character on it. Not a number. A kanji. Life. For a second, I thought I was just tired. That happened, right? You stared at numbers long enough and they started to look like letters. But the woman's hand was resting firmly on that button, her thumb pressing into it, as if she'd done it countless times. The button lit up with a soft white glow. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. The woman looked over, surprised. Is there a problem? She asked. Every part of me wanted to say no. To sit down, to mind my own business. To tell myself that the building had some quirky mezzanine level with a stupid brand name like Life Floor for a wellness company. But Sato's voice rose in the back of my mind. Rule 2. If a passenger presses a floor that doesn't exist in the building directory, get out before the doors close, no matter how rude it seems. I swallowed. Excuse me, ma'am, I said, walking toward the elevator. That button, where are you going? She blinked. Her face twisted with something like confusion. Where? The life floor, of course, she said slowly, as if testing whether I was joking. Our company's night branch is there. Same as always. Same as always. There was no such thing. I knew every tenant in the building. I'd memorized the names to sound professional when people walked in. There isn't a life floor, I said. My voice sounded thin in the sterile lobby. This building goes from 1 to 24. No special floors. Maybe you're thinking of another. The doors began to slide closed. Panic cut off the rest of my sentence. I lunged forward and jammed my hand between the doors. They stuttered, then opened again. The woman stared at me, eyes wide. That's dangerous, you know, she snapped. Stress sharpened the edge in her voice. I really don't have time for jokes. I still have reports too. Please step out, I said. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to sound calm. We can check the directory together. There is no life floor in this building. For a moment, her face twisted, not in anger, but in something like panic. Then, suddenly, it smoothed over. Her shoulders sagged. That's right, she whispered. That's right. Our office moved. I forgot. We moved 2 years ago. The life floor doesn't exist anymore. Her eyes unfocused, as if she were trying to look backward through fog. Ma'am, are you okay? I asked. She shook herself and stepped out of the elevator. As soon as she did, the button with the kanji flipped off. The light on it blinked 3 times, then went dark, and the button itself seemed to recede into the panel, leaving only smooth metal between 4 and 5. I stared at it, throat dry. See? I managed. She clutched her bag tighter and bowed, cheeks flushing. I'm so sorry, she murmured. It's just, the overtime, you know? It all blurs together. Thank you for stopping me. Don't mention it, I said automatically. We found her real company on the 15th floor. I walked her back to the elevator and watched her press 15 this time. The doors closed and the car glided upward, as normal as ever. But when I sat back at the desk, my hands were shaking. I didn't mention it to Sato during the shift change. He looked exhausted, and something in me didn't want to see his expression when I told him I had been one impulsive second away from letting the doors close. Breaking rule 2. The third rule took longer to catch up with me. By then, the night shift had knitted itself into my life. I went to classes during the day, grabbed a nap in the library or the clubroom, and rode the Chuo line into Shinjuku as the evening rush peaked. The city began to look different when you saw it mostly at night. Less like a place people lived in, more like a set that waited for human actors to come and go. I got used to the building's rhythms, too. Which companies stayed late? Which ones sent their workers home on the last train? Which floors were always dark, even at 9 p.m., because their tenants were just a name on a mailbox? The life floor never appeared again. Sometimes, during patrols, I'd glance at the elevator panels on different floors, checking between 4 and 5. There was no trace of the extra button. It was as if the metal itself denied it had ever existed. I told myself it had been a trick of my tired mind. That Sato's rules had gotten under my skin, making me see patterns where there were none. Humans were good at that. Then, early in November, Sato called in sick for a week. "You'll be with a substitute guard for a few days," the building manager told me. Old guy. Used to work here years ago. You might even learn something from him, Yuta-kun. The night I met him, rain was lashing against the glass doors. A typhoon was skirting the coast, and the weather report had told people to stay home. The building was almost empty when I arrived. Only a few lights burned in the high windows, like stranded eyes. The substitute was already at the desk. He was older than Sato, maybe in his late 60s, with a back that bent slightly no matter how straight he tried to stand. His uniform hung loose on his frame. But his eyes were sharp and clear behind his glasses. "Ah, you must be Yuta-kun," he said, bowing. "I'm Takeda. I worked this building back when it first opened. It's been a while, but the lobby hasn't changed." We went through the usual handover. Emergency numbers. Patrol routes. The small fridge in the staff room where someone had forgotten half a carton of milk months ago. I hesitated. Then, as he was putting on his patrol jacket, I asked, "Takeda-san, when you worked here before, did they tell you any strange rules about the elevator?" He paused, hand on the zipper. "Strange rules," he repeated. "You know. Don't ride it alone if this, or don't press that." For a moment, his eyes flicked toward the 3 elevators, lined up in the lobby like closed mouths. "Yes," he said quietly. "They told us things like that. Every building has its habits, you know. Its little taboos. Do you know why?" I pressed. "Where they came from?" Takeda looked at me. The lobby lights reflected in his glasses, hiding his eyes. "Has something happened?" he asked. I opened my mouth to say no. Then I thought of the life floor button, the woman's trembling fingers, and the way the kanji had seemed to swallow itself back into the panel. I thought of Sato's lined face when he'd said, "You don't have to believe in them. Just follow them." "Just a weird dream," I lied. "I've been doing too many night shifts." Takeda studied me for a moment, then nodded. "In that case," he said, "there's one more rule they might not have told you." "One more?" "If you ever get on the elevator," he said slowly, "and it goes past the floor you pressed, if it keeps moving, even though the indicator says it's arrived, don't panic. Don't say anything. Don't touch the panel. And whatever you do, don't step out until you're back on a floor with a number." A chill prickled along my arms. "That's awfully specific," I said. Takeda smiled faintly. "Buildings are like old people," he said. "They've been standing here through more than you'll ever know. Sometimes, they remember things we've forgotten. Or things we'd rather ignore." He patted my shoulder and headed out on patrol, leaving me alone with the elevators. The storm grew worse around midnight. Rain smeared the city lights into wavering streaks. The lobby windows rattled with each gust of wind. The building felt strangely hollow, like a seashell soundlessly filling with water. Only 3 people left after midnight. 2 men from the law firm, and a woman from the call center clutching an umbrella meaningful only as a gesture. By 1:30, I was alone. I walked my patrol with my flashlight off, letting the emergency lights and green exit signs guide me. The carpeted hallways absorbed sound. My own footsteps felt like an intrusion into someone else's dream. On the 19th floor, I paused by the elevator bank. The corridor stretched out on either side, lined with doors. All asleep. The elevator doors yawned in front of me, twin mirrors reflecting a thin young man in a security uniform, his face more tired than he'd admit. As I turned to leave, the call button blinked. I froze. No one was around. I was sure of it. I would have heard a door, a voice, the squeak of shoes. But the button glowed orange, accompanied by the soft chiming sound that said, "Someone has asked to go down." Cautiously, I walked back to the panel and checked the indicator. The request was coming from the 22nd floor. The call center, I thought. Maybe someone had just finished up. I pictured another exhausted worker coming out of the office, umbrella already open in their mind, thinking of the wet walk home. I could have taken the stairs down 3 floors. But the rain, the emptiness, and something in Takeda's added rule made me hesitate. Then I thought of the coins in my pocket. The vending machine in the staff room was still broken, and I wanted a hot drink. The vending machines on the 22nd floor worked just fine. "I'll just ride up, grab a coffee, and ride back down," I muttered. Talking aloud in empty spaces made them less empty. I pressed the call button. The middle elevator responded with a soft ding. The doors slid open, revealing the familiar interior, off-white walls, chrome handrails, the slightly stained gray floor. The indicator above the door said 19. I stepped inside and pressed 22. The doors closed. The faint hum of the motor vibrated through the floor. 20, 21, 22. The elevator slowed. I felt it. That little shift in gravity as the car prepared to stop. But the doors didn't open. The number on the indicator flickered between 22 and 23, as if the elevator couldn't decide which story to tell. Then it moved again. 23. I frowned. The Minato Central Tower didn't have a 23rd floor. I knew that. I'd walked the stairwell once from bottom to top, counting doors. After 22, there was a blank concrete wall where another door should have been. I stabbed at the panel, suddenly uneasy. The 22 button was still lit. The 19 button. The 1, 2, from some previous trip. But none of them responded. The door open button might as well have been painted on. The elevator shuddered once. Then the sensation of movement stopped. The indicator above the door went dark. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening to my breathing, and to the silence that pressed in from all sides. The kind of silence that made your ears ring. Then, with a soft sigh, the doors slid open. I expected to see concrete. Rebar. The unfinished skeleton of a floor that had never been built. Instead, I saw carpet. It was the same dull gray as the other office floors, patterned with faint grids. The lights in the ceiling were recessed and fluorescent, buzzing softly. A potted plant sat by the elevator bank, its leaves glossy and too perfect to be real. A hallway stretched out in front of me. Doors lined it on both sides. At the far end, a green exit sign glowed. The only thing wrong, blatantly, glaringly wrong, was the absence of any floor number on the wall. Every other level had a big silver 19, 20, 21 nailed beside the elevators. Here, the space where the number should have been was just bare white paint. My brain tried to explain it. Private floor, I thought. Unmarked. Maybe some secretive company had rented it and refused to appear on any listings. Maybe. Rule 3 whispered through my mind. If the elevator stops on a floor with no button, do not step out. I swallowed. My thumb hovered over the door close button. That was when I heard the voices. They seeped through the sealed doors like air through a crack. Layers of sound, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the low murmur of conversation. The living noises of an office operating past a decent hour. Then, more distinctly, footsteps. Approaching. I told him I'd send the report by 11, a man's voice was saying, amused. What's he going to do, fire me for being dead? A woman laughed, sharp and bright. Careful. Say that too loud and he might start checking the memorial tablets. I froze. The voices were wrong. Not in their words, but in their texture. They had the soft, muffled echo of sound coming through speakers. Like listening to a recording from another room. The footsteps grew clearer. A shadow appeared at the far end of the hallway. A man in a white shirt and loosened tie, jacket slung over his shoulder, walking toward the elevator. His face was indistinct at first, blurred by distance. My heart pounded against my ribs. Excuse me. The voice made me flinch. It came from behind me, inside the elevator. I spun around. The car was empty. Of course it was. But the voice was still there, slipping through the air like smoke. Excuse me, it repeated, polite, patient. Could you hold the doors? The request didn't come from the hallway. It came from everywhere else. From the walls. From the floor. From inside my skull. I pressed the door close button with a shaking thumb. Nothing happened. The man in the hallway walked closer. As he did, his features resolved into focus. He looked ordinary. Late 30s. Short black hair, thinning a little at the temples. A harmless face that you would forget 2 minutes after meeting him. Comfortingly unremarkable. Except I recognized him. Not from real life. From a photograph. There was a small plaque on the ground floor, near the convenience store entrance. It sat in a glass case, easy to miss if you didn't stop to read notices. I had, once, on a slow early shift. It was a memorial. In memory of the tenants lost in the elevator incident of 2003, it said. Then a list of names, each accompanied by a tiny black and white headshot. The third name on the list was Kazuo Nagase, 37. I was looking at his face now, in color, walking toward me in a hallway that shouldn't exist. Nagase-san, another voice called from somewhere down the corridor. Don't forget the drinks. You promised you'd bring beer. Can't have a farewell party without beer, a woman chimed in. Nagase smiled. He lifted a plastic convenience store bag in his left hand. I've got it, he called over his shoulder. Then he turned his gaze toward the elevator and looked straight at me. Our eyes met. For a second, there was no recognition in his face. Why would there be? To him, I was a stranger, a ghost in his routine. Then his gaze dropped to my uniform. To the building's logo embroidered on my chest. His smile widened. Ah, he said. You're new. Good. We've been waiting for someone. My mouth dried. Waiting? I managed. He stopped just short of the threshold. The elevator's safety sensor kept the doors open. The car felt suddenly smaller, as if his presence filled it without him needing to step inside. Of course, he said. We can't leave until we have someone to take over, you know. That's only fair. Behind him, more figures appeared in the hallway. A woman in a pencil skirt, a man with a company ID card dangling from his neck, another in rolled-up sleeves. They looked excited, like colleagues at the end of a long week, ready for a night out. Their eyes were wrong. Too bright. Too focused. Like hungry animals that had spotted something alive in a desert. Takeda-san was supposed to send us someone, Nagase went on conversationally. But he kept getting attached. Soft-hearted man. I thought he'd retired already. My breath caught. Takeda, the substitute guard. I remembered his bent back, his clear eyes, his added rule. Don't step out until you're back on a floor with a number. My thumb dug into the door close button hard enough to hurt. Sorry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This car is going down now. Building regulations. You'll have to wait for the next one. Nagase tilted his head. Down, he repeated. No, no. You're mistaken. You're going with us. We've worked very hard, you know. We gave the building everything. It's only fair that it gives us something in return. He lifted his left hand. The convenience store bag rustled. Inside, I glimpsed cans, beer, I thought. Cheap, watery brands the company might allow on a small celebration. Then the plastic shifted, and I saw what was beneath the cans. A neatly folded security uniform. My uniform. The patch on the chest bore my name. See? Nagase said gently. It's already decided. All you have to do is step out. The car felt too bright. The air inside it too thin. Stay inside and keep the doors from closing, Sato's voice echoed. Don't step out. My legs trembled. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to push past Nagase and sprint down that impossibly long hallway, to find a stairwell, a window, anything. As if there were anywhere to run to on a floor that didn't officially exist. The office workers gathered behind him, a half-circle of expectant faces. Their clothes were from 20 years ago, I realized suddenly. Outdated tie patterns. Bulky laptops under their arms. Flip phones clipped to their belts. Trapped in the fashion of their last day. You don't have to be afraid, Nagase said softly. We're not monsters. We're just tired. So tired. The workday never ends here. He chuckled. Meetings, reports, revisions, clients. No trains to catch. No clocking out. Just more of the same. Forever. His eyes, however, burned. But if you take my place, he whispered, I can finally go home. I can ride the elevator down, just once, and walk out into the night. I can see my son again. He was 6 when I left him. He must be grown now. Maybe he has children. Maybe he's forgotten my face. His voice cracked. If you step out, Nagase said, I'll get to remember what it's like to move forward. Just once. Isn't that fair? Something inside me lurched. It was almost convincing. That was the worst part. The story wasn't some demon's temptation. It was human. Heavy with regret and longing. I pictured a boy waiting at a dinner table, chopsticks in hand, staring at the clock. A wife holding a phone that never rang. A photo on a family altar, slowly yellowing with time. It's not fair, I said hoarsely. But it's not my fault. Nagase's smile vanished. The air in the hallway cooled a few degrees. The fluorescent lights hummed, then flickered. Not your fault, he repeated. Of course not. It's never anyone's fault. The company, the schedule, the broken cable, the overloaded car, there's always something else to blame. He took a step closer. When the elevator fell, he said, voice low, I was talking to the security guard on duty. I remember his face as the doors closed. He was about your age. He looked, relieved that he wasn't getting in with us. Nagase's gaze sharpened. He lasted less than a month afterward. Couldn't sleep. Started seeing us in the lobby. Finally moved away. But the building remembers, you see. It doesn't like loose ends. My blood turned to ice. The plaques. The rules. The way Takeda had looked at the elevators, not with fear, but with the resignation of someone who'd watched too many people ignore warnings. How many guards have you tried this with? I asked, stalling. My fingers slid along the panel, searching for something, anything, that might respond. Nagase shrugged. Enough, he said. One for each of us, eventually. We're patient. We have all the time in the world up here. Behind him, the office workers shifted. Their faces blurred for a moment, then sharpened again, like a video buffering on a weak connection. My thumb brushed against the alarm button. I hesitated. If this was some hallucination, some stress-induced nightmare, I'd look insane when the speakers crackled to life and I babbled about dead office workers on a non-existent floor. If it was real. Buildings are like old people, Takeda had said. They've been standing here through more than you'll ever know. Maybe the building was listening. I slammed my thumb down on the alarm. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a shrill bell screamed through the car. The sound was wrong, louder than it should have been, echoing through the hallway and bouncing off walls that had no right to exist. Nagase flinched. The workers behind him recoiled, hands flying to their ears. The fluorescent lights strobed wildly, plunging their faces into alternating bands of bright white and shadow. "Stop that," Nagase snarled. His calm veneer cracked, revealing something raw and jagged beneath. "There's no one to hear you up here." I kept my thumb on the button. The ringing grew louder, building on itself, as if every alarm the elevator had ever sounded was joining in from different years. Overload warnings. Maintenance alerts. Emergency stops. The car shuddered. The hallway flickered like a bad signal. For an instant, the potted plant by the elevator wavered, replaced by a stack of dusty paint cans. The office doors melted into bare concrete. A sheet of plastic hung from the ceiling, rippling in a wind I couldn't feel. Then the illusion snapped back, solidifying into the finished corridor again. "Yuta!" The shout came from above, from nowhere and everywhere. Takeda's voice. "Don't answer them," he cried. "Stand back." Nagase's eyes widened. "That old fool," he hissed. "He's interfering again." He lunged. The motion broke whatever boundary had kept him separate from the elevator. His hand shot forward, fingers outstretched, reaching for my wrist. I jerked back on instinct. At the same moment, the car lurched downward. The sensation was like the ground dropping out beneath me. My stomach slammed into my throat. The alarm's screaming intensified into a higher, desperate pitch. The doors began to close. Nagase snarled. His hand slammed into the narrowing gap and met metal. The doors didn't bounce. They didn't reopen. For a split second, his fingers flattened, skin and bone compressing unnaturally thin, as if the building itself refused to admit his existence into the car. Then the gap sealed. I caught one last glimpse of his face, stretched and distorted. His mouth formed a word I couldn't hear over the alarm. The indicator above the door flickered. 22. The elevator shuddered to a stop. The bell fell abruptly silent, leaving a ringing hole in the air. My ears throbbed. My knees buckled, and I caught myself on the handrail. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the doors slid open. Bright fluorescent light flooded in. I stared at the familiar hallway of the 22nd floor. The vending machines. The company logos. The framed motivational posters about productivity and teamwork. The number 22 gleamed politely on the wall. Yuta-kun. I looked up. Takeda stood by the vending machines, chest heaving, flashlight in hand. His hair was damp with sweat, plastered to his forehead. He looked older than he had at the beginning of the shift by at least 10 years. "Are you all right?" he demanded. I stepped out of the elevator on legs that felt like rubber. The carpet under my shoes was firm. Real. The smell of dust and coffee hung in the air. My voice broke. "I think so." Takeda grabbed my shoulders, shaking me once. "Did you step out?" he asked. "Tell me honestly. Did you set foot on that floor?" I shook my head, unable to force words out. His grip eased. His shoulders sagged. "Good," he said quietly. "Good. Then you're still yours." He glanced at the open elevator, then reached past me and jabbed the door close button. The door shut with a soft sigh, as if relieved. Come on, he said. Let's go downstairs. We sat in the staff room with the door closed. The storm outside had weakened into steady rain. The building hummed softly around us, oblivious to the small, shaking drama unfolding in one of its hidden veins. Takeda made tea with hands that trembled only slightly. He poured it into cheap paper cups and pushed one toward me. Drink, he said. The warmth helped. For a while, we sat in silence, listening to the sound of the old air conditioner and the distant hum of the elevators. They don't usually try so hard, Takeda said at last. You must have caught their attention somehow. There? I repeated, voice raw. The ones who didn't make it down, he said. Not just from the incident. From all sorts of accidents. Heart attacks in stairwells. People who stayed too late and never woke up at their desks. The building holds on to them. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of guilt. He rubbed a hand over his face. After the elevator fell in 2003, the owners tried to ignore it. They fixed the cables, redesigned the safety systems, put up the plaque, paid compensation. But no one wanted to talk about what the building itself had learned. What it had learned? I asked. Buildings don't learn. They're just concrete and steel. Concrete and steel that's watched thousands of people rushing in and out every day, Takeda said. Absorbing their footsteps, their arguments, their tears, their laughter. You don't think that leaves an imprint? I thought of the hallway that shouldn't exist. Of Nagase's face, too ordinary and too intense at once. But why rules? I asked. Why the reflections, the non-existent floors? Why does it matter if someone takes the elevator alone? Takeda sighed. Because the building doesn't see us as individuals, he said. Not the way we do. It sees patterns. A certain weight on the cables. A combination of buttons pressed at certain times of night. The sound of someone's heartbeat when they're alone in the car. It's like a game of Go. Positions on a board. Some patterns lead to accidents. Others lead to trades. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. Years after the incident, people started talking, he went on. Tenants who saw coworkers in hallways that didn't exist. Night guards who heard footsteps above empty floors. A cleaning lady who rode the elevator and found herself stepping out into an office full of typewriters, even though the building opened after typewriters went out of fashion. He smiled faintly. They always came back, he said. If they remembered to follow the rules. If they listened when the building whispered that something was wrong. Those who didn't. He let the sentence trail off. You knew about Nagase, I said quietly. You recognized him. Takeda's jaw tightened. I was on shift that night, he said. I watched the elevator doors close. I heard the scream of the cables snapping. I was the first to pry the doors open on the ground floor and look down into the shaft. He stared at his hands. I told myself it wasn't my fault, he whispered. That I couldn't have known it would happen. But that doesn't matter to the dead. Or to the building. Silence settled between us, heavy and old. After a while, I found my voice. So what happens now? I asked. To Nagase. To the others. Takeda shook his head. They'll keep waiting, he said. They don't have anywhere else to go. Time doesn't pass the same way on that floor. Every night is their last night. Every trip to the convenience store is their last. They try to bargain with whoever stumbles in, hoping the building will let them ride down if they leave someone in their place. And the building allows that? I asked, horrified. Sometimes, Takeda said. Every time someone vanishes, a plaque goes up. An accident. A sudden illness. A resignation that no one can fully explain. The building balances its books. He looked at me. But tonight, it didn't get you, he said. And if I have my way, it never will. I swallowed. Why did you come up? I asked. How did you know I was there? He gave a small, weary smile. I heard the alarm, he said simply. Not with my ears. With whatever part of me the building has claimed over the years. We're old friends, in a way. I've spent more nights here than I have at home. He stood, joints cracking. I think it's time I really retire, he said. Before it decides I'm more useful as a memory than as a guard. He walked to the window and looked out at the rain. The rules will keep you safe, he said. As long as you keep following them. As long as you never start thinking you're the exception, or that you can negotiate with the patterns. He glanced back at me. And one day, when you've had enough of this job, you'll pass the rules on to whoever replaces you. You'll look at the elevators, and they'll look back at you, and you'll decide how much you want to tell. A cold shiver traced my spine. I don't want to be like you, I blurted. No offense. I don't want to spend my life here, watching for floors that shouldn't exist. Takeda laughed softly. Then don't, he said. Graduate. Find another path. Forget these stories if you can. But remember this much, some places are hungrier than others. Some doors open both ways. And no elevator in any city ever built is truly innocent. Sato returned the following week, pale but recovered. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his lined face unreadable. When I finished, he sighed and pulled out a cigarette, rolling it between his fingers without lighting it. Takeda-san always was too soft, he said. He should have left a long time ago. You knew him? I asked. Of course, Sato said. He trained me, just like he trained you. Gave me the rules. Added his own. Tried to keep the building's appetite in check. He glanced at the elevators. So, he said. Are you going to quit? I opened my mouth to say yes. Then I thought of tuition. Of rent. Of my parents' tired faces when they talked about money over dinner. I thought of the fact that, in some twisted way, I had been chosen. Shown a corner of the city's underbelly that most people would never glimpse. No, I said finally. Not yet. I'll be careful. I'll follow the rules. Sato nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. Then remember this, he said. The building isn't evil. It's just indifferent. It doesn't care about us any more than we care about the insects that get caught in automatic doors. But it does notice patterns. And it hates loose ends. He turned back to the monitors, where the security cameras showed the lobby from 12 different angles. Oh, he added casually. There's a new rule, by the way. From now on, if the alarm ever goes off with no obvious cause, you leave the elevator alone for the rest of the night. Don't ride it. Don't even stand near it. Just take the stairs. Is that Takeda's idea? I asked. Sato shook his head. No, he said. That one's yours. He pointed at the logbook. Write it down. In pencil. For now. I did. Rule 4, if the elevator alarm sounds by itself, don't use any elevator in the building until morning. As I wrote, I felt the building around me, humming softly. Pipes. Wires. Cables. Thousands of kilograms of steel suspended by threads. Somewhere above, a floor without a number waited in the dark, furnished with desks and fluorescent lights in hollows where people should have grown old. I imagined Nagase standing in that hallway, convenience store bag in hand, glaring at the closed elevator doors. He'd been so close. I wondered if he'd try again. With someone else. On another night when the rain blurred the city and the trains ran empty. He would. Of course he would. Time meant nothing to those who'd been taken out of its flow. I closed the logbook. The elevators stood silent and polished in the lobby, their doors reflecting the bright lights and the faint, tired outline of my face. In the convex security mirror above them, for a moment, there was nothing at all. Then, slowly, my reflection faded in, as if the building had decided, for now, to acknowledge that I existed. I nodded to it. Good evening, I said softly. the elevator stayed still. The building hummed. And somewhere above us, on a floor that skipped the living numbers, the workday continued without end, waiting for the moment when someone, someday, would decide that a stranger's life was a fair trade for going home.